Things are looking up. Your business is growing. So what's your next step? A bigger office? A new supplier? Your next big contract overseas? Your business has growing needs. You'll need more support, more flexibility, more resources, and a bank that makes it their business to help expand your business. Welcome to Business Banking with HSBC. All our experience and expertise brought right to you so that you and your business can take the next step. You'll have support from a dedicated relationship manager and access to our global network of experts. The flexibility to manage your finances across multiple devices. International accounts all on one platform. And much more. So choose Business Banking with HSBC and take your next step.
Hello and welcome to the 7th Annual Indonesia Economic Forum. We have been hosting this forum from our studio in Jakarta and reaching the world. We have speakers and participants joining us from across the world, including the United States, Australia, Hong Kong, India, Singapore, and of course here in Indonesia. We have a very interesting and a very exciting panel today talking about revitalizing Indonesia's textile sector, SOS. The reason is because the textile sector is in need of revitalization given its strategic importance and strategic need to create jobs for Indonesians. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers to join us, and delivering our keynote address today is Alma Karma. He's the Director of Promotions Development at the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board. Alma, thank you very much for joining us and welcome. We also have Jemmy Kartiwa, who's the Chairman of the Indonesian Textiles Association, Ravi Shankar, who's the Chairman of APSyFi and also President Director of Asia Pacific Fibers. And we have Professor Dr. Didik Rachbini, who's a Senior Economist at the Institute of Development for Economics and Finance. Now, what's been happening with Indonesia's textile sector? The textile industry was once the darling of the country's manufacturing sector. It was, in fact, one of the largest job creators and contributors to the country's economic growth. But despite economic ups and downs, the textile sector saw steady growth from the early 1970s to the mid-2000s. But since 2008, the sector has been floundering, buffeted by both internal and external factors. Internally, unclear government trade policies, rising wage and utility costs, a lack of new investments has affected the sector. Externally, the rise of China as a major manufacturing hub badly affected the competitiveness of the sector as cheap Chinese goods flooded the market. Despite these challenges, the textile sector's output is estimated at US $30 billion a year, making up about 2% of GDP growth and 10% of total manufacturing output. But as it charts its new path forward, the sector is at a crossroads. Today, the industry finds itself struggling to survive. New investors have found it difficult to compete in an environment of survival of the fittest. Many long-term textile producers have seen output fall due to imports of cheap foreign products. So how does it go forward? Going forward, if the textile sector is to once again regain its former glory, there needs to be fundamental change in government policy, especially the trade regime that encourages imports. The industry also needs urgent support in the form of energy subsidies to remain competitive, and perhaps tax breaks. But there is future hope. With a fast-growing middle class, Indonesia's domestic market offers huge opportunities for the textile manufacturers. Indonesian textile players are also investing in new materials such as polyester, which provide value add to the industry as well as to the overall economy. The textile sector has it's an important strategic sector for Indonesia. What is this path forward? This is what we're going to discuss this afternoon. May I now please invite Pak Alma to deliver his keynote address. Pak Alma, the floor is yours.
Honorable panelists, Mr. Jemmy Kartiwa Sastraatmaja, Chairman of Indonesian Textile Association, Mr. Ravi Shankar, President and Director of Asia Pacific Fibers, Mr. Didik Rachbini from INDEF, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. First of all, allow me to extend my warm regards as well as apologize for His Excellency Pak Bahlil Lahadia, the Chairman of the Investment BKPM, who cannot join us in this afternoon due to conflicting schedule. I'm honored and delighted to be here today, represented the Chairman of the BKPM, to share with you a brief story of Indonesian economy, and in particular, our latest investment policy and performance. I will also try to cover textile industries briefly in particular, and afterwards we will be listening to the honorable panelists to deepen the discussion on how we could, as stated on the session title, Revitalizing Indonesian Textile Industry, SOS. Honorable participants, let me start by touching upon the Indonesian textile and apparel industry. The textile and textile product of TPT industry is one of the mainstay sectors because it contributes significantly to the national economy. Moreover, the textile industry I see is a sector that is classified as a labor incentive and export-oriented. Up to the third quarter of the 2020, we have managed to achieve an investment about 31.56 trillion rupiah from the textile industry and 11.96 trillion rupiah from apparel industry. From the employment side, since 2015 to September 2020, the investment realization from these two industry has managed to absorb almost 630,000 Indonesian workers. To support the Making Indonesia 4.0 programs set by Ministry of Industry, BKPM undertake to improve local content, especially upstreams, like raw material, provide land in KIT Batang that is dedicated to textile sectors, encourage the textile industry to renew its machinery to be competitive and efficient, encourage the specialization of products such as Muslim clothing, sportswear made from special materials. Also attract foreign investment where Indonesian companies cannot fill, and also encouraging large companies to cooperate with local companies as well as small medium enterprises to build a supply chain or become vendors. Distinguished guests, now I would like to show you the Indonesian investments updates. Up to the third quarter of 2020, we have managed to achieve a 74.8% for the total target of 611.6 trillion rupiah. Investment relation in the third quarter alone contribute about 2,209 trillion rupiah. It is an exceptional achievement considering that the burdensome situation we must endure due to COVID-19 outbreak. Given the situation of the global trend and the COVID-19 pandemic, BKPM has made the adjustment to the investment realization target from 886 trillion rupiah to 817.2 trillion rupiah. Let me brief you that investment in Java Island was 307.5 trillion rupiah or 50.3%. and almost equally. Investment from outside Java Islands was 304.1 trillion rupiah, or 49.7% from total investment out of total investment realization in Q3 in 2020. While domestic direct investment has shown another prevailing performance compared to the FDI, with investment value of 309.9 trillion rupiah, or 50.7% from total investment realization. From the employment side, since January to September 2020, the achievement of the investment realization has managed to absorb almost 900,000, 861,541 workers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to maintain this momentum, BKPM has operated under 6 key performance indicators. These 6 indicators are the strategies to survive the pandemic as well as to boost investment performance. Among the 6, we are currently targeting the execution of a large investment realization. Distinguished participants, Indonesia has been listed as the 4th best country to invest post COVID-19, according to London Post, which are using 4 unique factors from World Bank Group. These are the country natural resource, markets, efficiency, and strategic assets. The robust economy, abundant natural resource, and larger market make Indonesia worthy and of every dollar's investment. Being recommended as one of the best country to invest post-COVID-19, Indonesia has proven its commitment to prevent the spreading of the virus to bring the country back as it was. Investment is expected to become the main engine of economic growth, especially investment in manufacturing sectors. Indonesia will mainly focus on 5 priority sectors to invest, namely energy, medical devices, mining, infrastructure, and manufacture. Our governments believe that the manufacturing sectors is of vital to increase Indonesia potential GDP growth and at least maintain the growth in the long run. Developing manufacturing sectors is also essential to reduce Indonesian dependence on raw commodity-based export with relatively low complexity and linkage to the other industries. It will help create value added in the economy, so Indonesia could diversify its export product. In addition, Indonesia consumer market is largely undiscovered, hence its huge potential. This fact is a key factor for investment in manufacturing or consumer product. We also have identified strategy to cope with this pandemic. To maintain the investment climate, we are aiming to facilitate existing companies. To facilitate existing companies which the investment plan have not been executed, we also aim to bring new investment. We are also formulating a series of incentives for potential expansion of existing companies. As for the domestic direct investment, BKPM committed to support local businessmen and small medium enterprises. We had signed an MOU between BKPM and the Minister of State-Owned Enterprises in the context of the accelerating investment licensing, exchanging data and information to increase investment realization and facilitate state-owned enterprise companies. This MOU will provide a platform that creates a partnership between the local and foreign investors with small, medium enterprises. As one of our strategy to boost investment realization, we are currently targeting the execution of large investment realization. We believe that resolving investment issue in Indonesia is one of promotion strategy to attract more investment coming. We believe that resolving investment debottlenecking in Indonesia is one of the promotion strategy to attract inward investment. From 708 trillion rupiah investment realization potential in the pipeline, we managed to facilitate about 474.9 trillion rupiah. Some of the big companies we have facilitated are Rosneft, Vale, Hyundai, and Lotte Chemical. BKPM is not only facilitating issue from large investments, but also medium and small investment. In order to increase the ease of doing business in Indonesia, President Instruction Number 7, year 2019 has mandated BKPM as the forefront. The President issued this regulation to streamline all business licensing toward BKPM and grants BKPM the authority to review policies deemed as unfavorable for investors. This kind of breakthrough is one of the examples of our commitment to set an enable environment for investment. Starting a business in Indonesia is now more measurable, clearer, and simpler. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in Indonesia, there are special economic zones, free trade zones, large-scale industrial estate, bonded zone, and bonded logistic centers, a strategic choice for investor due to its specialized facilities and incentive. Back in 2019, when the tension between China and US was heating up due to the trade war, our fellow countries in Southeast Asia managed to gain the momentum and attract companies to relocate their plans into their region. Early this year, more and more investment were planning to relocate from mainland China as a COVID-19 outbreak. In order to seize this second wave, we have committed to execute a series of actions, such as strengthening our competitive advantage, formulating incentive to make export incentive more competitive, developing infrastructure and connectivity, and improving quality of human resources. Currently, we have received interest from global companies around the world who are moving their operation to Indonesia. Chairman of BKPM has established a special task force to carry out the President Jokowi's mandate to seize this opportunity and of the company relocation. This task force is designed to facilitate and provide end-to-end service for investors interested to relocate or diversify their investment location to Indonesia. In order to facilitate a company relocating to Indonesia, President Jokowi has given instruction to prepare an industrial designed area that covers more than 4,300 hectares, situated at the strategic location in central Java. Batang Integrated Industry Park, a series of excellence in terms of its strategic locations, land conformity, competitive and land price, and built-in infrastructures. Moreover, labor wage in the Central Java is still very competitive compared to West Java and capital region of Jakarta. Based on World Bank Ease of Doing Business 2020, Indonesia ranks 70 out of 190 countries surveyed. It's a high jump from rank 120 to in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, our government continues to stimulate the investor to bring more investment to Indonesia by provide a physical incentive, especially to encourage investment in manufacturing sector, as it is one sector that contribute significantly to Indonesian development. By the latest Minister Finance Regulation number 130 year 2020, tax holiday is now more open to business sectors that fulfill certain criteria. There are 100 tax allowances. There are 133 business fields are eligible for tax allowance, expanded from 145 segments in the previous regulation. With this incentive, investor can enjoy the deduction of net corporate income amounted 30% from the total investment, carried over a 6 years period. Since August this year, the granting of the tax allowance is carried out by the chairman of the BKPM on behalf of the Minister of Finance. Tax deduction. The super deductible tax policy is one of the government effort to foster a conducive business climate for the growth of the country industrial sectors. It will support of making Indonesia 4.0 initiative. In the new tax relief scheme, the government proposed up to 200% tax relief for industries that invest in vocational education. As for those involved with the R&D activities in order to create innovation, the minister proposed up to 300% tax relief. Both these are included in the priority strategy on the Making Indonesia 4.0 roadmap. To support implementation of GR45 of 2019, government has issued Minister of Finance and Regulation number 16, 2020, concerning provision of net income reduction facility for new investment or business expansion in certain business fields, which are labor intensive industry. That income will be deductible by 60% of the total investment in the form of tangible fixed asset, including land, that is used for main business activities. Is charged for 6 years since the tax year when commercial production starts. Ladies and gentlemen, BKPM is committed to always provide the best service to the investors through regulation reform, expediting licensing process, formulating of incentives, and assurance in giving investor protection and equal treatment. We will be more than happy to assist you in any way to explore business opportunities in Indonesia. Now is the perfect time to invest in Indonesia. Hence, allow me to invite you to invest in Revitalizing Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pa Alma, for that presentation. Thank you, Pa Alma, for that presentation. I think it's very encouraging. BKPM has been at the forefront of attracting investment, not just foreign, but also domestic. I think domestic investors who have been in Indonesia for a very long time, I think would be encouraged by the government's response, and I think a willingness to work with domestic investors who have been here already, as well as, of course, attracting foreign investors. So thank you very much. I would like to, if you could stay maybe for a few minutes, Pa Alma, I would like to invite Pa Basrie Kamba, who is our moderator for the session. Pa Basrie, Director of Asia Pacific Rayon. If you would like to take over the session, Pa Basrie.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Basrie Kamba. I'm a director at Asia Pacific Rayon, Indonesia's leading integrated viscose staple fiber manufacturer located in Riau. I'm also one of the committee heads of the Indonesia Textile Association. So for the next 60 minutes, during these post-lunch sessions, we'll be discussing about the topic, revitalizing Indonesia's textile industry with 3 subject matter experts. The first 2, Pa Ravi and Pa Jemmy, are from the industry, both upstream and downstream. Professor Didik, the founder of INDEF, Institute for Development of Economic and Finance. So the 3 of them will share their rich first-hand insights on what is the situation inside and outside the border and what they recommend for solution. The way I manage this 1-hour discussion is to give 15 minutes to each speaker maximum, because we expect more time for questions from participants in Bahasa or English. I will translate later. So if we have a good relevant question, I will bring that question straight away to the panelists even before the Q&A because, we have so many webinars these days, many of them useful, but most of them are only making our eyes fatigue. Or else we're just turning our screen on, but our eyes is actually on the Netflix, right? So before I call the first panelist, I want to invite you all to take active participation by typing your questions to us anytime from now or raising your hands during the Q&A. This session, as mentioned by Pak Sweb, is the second day of the 3-day Indonesia Economic Forum. Our topic today is critical. It's very important for both the industry and the government to get insights or workable thoughts from the panel and the audience as well. Why? Despite the free trade agreements, the omnibus law, and more incentive for foreign investments, we understand that the government has also started to take a deeper look on obstacles facing by industry to grow, like mentioned by Pak Akmal, right? Is this industry really SOS situations under the brink of collapse? Why? What happened? Why many parties constantly label this business as a sunset industry? For many of the players, importing is more lucrative business than running a factory, but it is too risky for our economy. So let me invite our first panelist, Pak Ravi Shankar. He's 35 years in the industry, graduating from Harvard Business School, and now President Director of PT Asia Pacific Fiber, and also Chairman of the Indonesia Upstream Association, APSyFi. Pak Ravi, this industry has assisted Indonesia for almost 5 decades, right? And then during our second meeting, our last meeting with President Jokowi in November last year, the President underlined 3 things about the sector. Number 1, cost of production is still very high. Export remains stagnant for so many years. And the third one, lack of long-term plan that consequently result in a small number of investment in this textile and apparel industry. But that is 12 months ago. So how do you see the direction so far, policies, and then all the efforts by BKPM, by the Ministry of Industry that have been aggressively moving toward to boost the performance of the industry? So Pak Ravi, the stage, the screen is yours for 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Basrie, for the kind introduction. Welcome participants to the Indian Economic Forum. As just said by Paul, it's important industry. For Alma, there is great potential in the textile industry for investment. And so my presentation is simply going to benchmark some of our competing nations and look a bit more strategically into what we can learn from these countries. Next. Next. Okay, so Shweb just mentioned, this has been the mainstay of our nations becoming an emerging nation, over 30, 40 decades of contribution from the textile sector. It's 3%, but with a lot more potential, which we will discuss next. Okay, so I'd like to talk about 2 things on this slide. If you look at the right, top right, it's per capita. And we can see Indonesia had a healthy per capita growth of about 4.2% cumulatively year on year. It's at about 8.2 kilos, 8.26 kilos, where it stands today per capita. And emerging nations average is about 11 kilos. So that gap itself provides us an investment growth of about 50% of industry capacity. So there's tremendous potential on consumption. If we look at the other 2 charts, GDP and this, the takeaway there is that the growth is very relevant to GDP, and economic growth improves per capita. So as an emerging nation with a lot of potential middle class growth, This is, again, another reason why this is such a potential sector. Next. Okay, this has, again, two messages. If you look at the right top, there's a big spurt in capacity that is in Rayon. Rayon is an important raw material in the industry sector, and recently Indonesia has installed new capacity by Asia Pacific Rayon, and so we have big space for growth, consumption growth. If you look at the other two, top is polyester filament and staple fiber. In filament especially, the production has been very flat. It doesn't reflect the growth of consumption, and consumption has steadily increased. If you look at staple fiber, there was some investment, some growth in capacity, consumption has come up. The message here is that investments are not taking place to stay ahead of consumption, and that is because of very low margins in the business. And these margins already addressed cost competitiveness as well as very easy access for imported material. And that is cost stagnation in investment. Next. Okay, we could look at then the midstream. The left graph is on spinning, and we can see that spinning still has a positive trade balance. It's still export worthy and a strong sector of the Indonesian textile sector. The right column is the midstream, which is the weaving and knitting. Used to be very strong sectors in our textile chain. Again, you can see production growth has not taken place. On the contrary, it is negative growth, and consumption has increased steadily. So this is again an opportunity area and a midstream area. Now, the reason for that is a lot of dumping, extremely cheap prices of imported raw material that has caused stagnation of our production chain. Next. Okay, this is where we get into the comparison phase, where we have compared China, India, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Turkey, and Indonesia. We will see in that export chart or in the graph, Vietnam has a phenomenal increase in exports. Bangladesh is growing. Turkey has revived and it's growing. Indonesia has pretty flat export growth. So next. Yeah, now this is trade balance. From this, we also can see that what is the growth of exports to imports. We can see that most of our competing nations have growing trade balances, better trade balances. Indonesia has been on the decline, again, reflecting from what we saw earlier that imports have increased and exports has a flat rate of growth. Next. Yeah, this is something to look at investments. We've taken investment across the chain. This first chart is spindles or in spinning, and green box is Indonesia, and you can see compared to India, to China, the blue column, India, and other countries in that competitive analysis, that investments in Indonesia have the lowest compared to these nations. So all these nations across the last 10 years have invested continuously, either to increase capacity or to upgrade their domestic industry. The right column is texturized yarn, again, one of our strong areas, but again, growth is very low. New investments in machinery has been very low. Next. Yeah, these are looms and knitting machines. Looms has been the mainstay of our textile weaving, has been the mainstay of our textile industry for many years. Our loom investments, as I showed in the earlier graph, have negative production growth. And knitting is the emerging area of applications. More and more knitting is coming up in this world, and we've seen investment in knitting in all these countries. Indonesia has some investments, but has a great potential to invest more in knitting. Next. Yeah. So this is, again, just a comparative chart on exports, where we can see Vietnam, Bangladesh, all in the 30 plus export, $30 billion plus export. And so the potential for Indonesia, obviously, we have the asset base. We have been integrated for over 3 decades. We have raw material, both polyester and rayon. So obviously, there's a great, big potential. And so we could easily hit the $30 billion mark for exports from Indonesia, textile exports, textile and clothing, I mean, and a 50 billion challenge is also not out of reach. So I think this is the kind of potential we have. So what we have to do is revitalize our industry. We need to drive policy in order to make it more competitive. And you will see in the analysis that it's all about integration. Next. Yeah, so here are some, just a quick analysis. If you look at China, capacities existed in polyester, but they invested extremely big in integrating their industry. They have about 50% of the world capacity today, and it's all happened in the last 20 years. And they have integrated right up to the refinery. So obviously the state is involved. Obviously the sector has a tremendous amount of focus, and the cost competitiveness of this sector is also driven by government. So it's a very tough competitor, and they have such scales of capacity that they are exporting at unbelievably competitive prices. India played catch up to China, but they have done a great job. About 10 years ago, they invested in a ministry at the central government level, just exclusively for textiles. They've set up a lot of SEZs, a lot of textile parks, and now they have a great export to import ratio. So it's all about value addition and using local materials. Next. If you look at Vietnam, which was the star in that chart, 17% growth in exports over the last decade. Again, their secret has been their free trade treaties with Europe and America. They had access to the market, but they drove the policies to integrate the industry nicely. They have good skilled labor force, and they have set up, I think, 17 to 20 textile parks just to get the whole industry very efficient and competitive. So that's their success. Turkey is very important because Turkey, I think, is a very similar story to Indonesia. 8 years ago, Turkey was utilization falling, weaving looms at 40% operational capacity, and the government stepped in. They were also driven by excessive imports, very cheap imports. The local industry was floundering. They did all the right policies. They, of course, put in heavy protectionist methods like safeguard duties. And as soon as they have done that, they've revived their industry very well. Their exports continue to grow. They have a great access, of course, to Europe. And it's a good story to benchmark of how they have revived. They have also invested in other industries, value-added industries like home furnishings, automotive, hosieries, and this has all led to their growth. Bangladesh has a very impressive story. Again, they provide a lot of incentives, cash incentives for using local raw materials, for using local textiles. And so their integration has grown very well based on local integration. Next. Next. Yeah. So we have our revitalization opportunities, and there are three main drivers for revitalization. One is import substitution. There's a lot of potential in import substitution. I just said we have rayon, we have polyester, and we have sufficient quantities of raw material in order to substitute a lot of the imports. Of course, investments have to take place. New products we have to import. Very encouraging to hear BKPM's encouragement towards investment. So we think that's good alignment. Export, as I said, $30 billion is an easy target. If we can get our integration together, we benchmark these, provide incentives for using local raw material. All our exports should have value addition. We get more competitive and we can get more exports. So export growth is the second driver. The third is domestic consumption. We talked about how big the local market is, and certainly if we can enjoy the consumption of domestic products for the domestic industry itself will re-landscape the textile industry into a high growth industry. Next. Okay, so if you look at our revitalization, then there's a major scorecard. We could have $60 billion of textile output with about $25+ billion of trade surplus contributing to countries' forex. So these are big drivers. Of course, employment is a big driver, and contributor to economic growth is the next driver. Next. So this is the roadmap. It takes the three drivers. It breaks up import substitution targets, export targets, and this. And we can see that from the current drive from the Department of Industries and the support from the government and the two associations working together, we have great hope that this roadmap will be realized. Now, I would, there's often said that, the domestic market doesn't have the products, doesn't have this. So as Asia Pacific Fiber, I'd like to take a few slides to show you that there is potential in each one of the companies in Indonesia, and it needs just alignment and policy in order to bring this output. So if you allow me, next slide. Next. Yeah. So I think I've just taken Asia Pacific as I know this business, and it of course is any upstream producer has a very large footprint, a very large customer base, so it has a high impact on the industry. It plays a crucial role in the competitiveness because raw material is about 50-60% of the cost of the finished product. And so that's very important to be competitive upstream. We need to innovate. The consumer trends are changing and we need more and more products. And I think the industry is gearing up, and each one has its own strategy going forward. And the future, of course, is collaboration. Earlier, we imported cotton, we exported yarn, we imported gray, we exported finished fabrics, we exported garments. I think the name of the game now is collaboration with midstream across the industry so that we can be more competitive and export. Next. Yeah, so if you look at consumer trends today, of course, they are realigned. Sustainability is the biggest story. Even young consumers are looking at long-term sustainability. So all companies have to align with sustainability. Protection has become big. Apart from workwear and outdoor wear, there is medical protection. APF, Asia Pacific, did a lot of development and provided the domestic market with medical suits and maskers, etc., high performance. So those potential is there in the local industry. Comfort with work from home and leisure and functional clothing are very important. And so comfort is a big theme. Multi-fibers, always the comfort factor of Rayon, for example, is cool and environmentally friendly and very nice feel. Cotton and wool we don't produce in Indonesia, so there's a lot of opportunity to substitute this. So multi-fiber is a consumer area of demand. And then semi-technical, where shoes, dolls, there's a lot of export from Indonesia, which also involves textile, and we could add a lot of value. So these are some end segments. Next.
Ravi, you almost spent 20 minutes, Pak. So can you have this? This is the last slide.
Yeah. Okay. I'll wrap it up. So if you go to the next slide, Pak. Yeah. So this is a concept of sustainability that is important. As you know, water is a very rare resource in Indonesia, and whatever we can put in our yarns and fibers as an integrated part of our product, it stays durable, is inherent, and therefore it's very important. Can you go to the second last slide? Yeah, one more. No, one more. Yeah. Okay. So again, as the industry, we have a lot of solutions to provide from the raw material side. We have, to drive this revitalization, we can contribute. We can integrate with upstream PTA to PX, which is Tuban. We can invest as investment Batang in filament. We showed you the chart where filament is consumption and demand is almost equal. So filament expansion can be done. Substitution of imports can be a great driver. So this is our contribution to the revitalization. Thank you, Basrie.
Ravi, thank you so much. I'll get back to you with my questions. We have somebody here that cannot wait for the next panelist, but this question is for you from Iren Justitia. He said, Ravi, so please give a very short answer, Ravi. Why is our price higher in China on most fabrication?
Yeah, I think we've said how the industry has been constructed in these countries, and we've done the analysis of how they are integrated. They have textile parks. The special textile parks have pricing that makes them very competitive, special pricing in power, special pricing in a lot of the costs are handled by the state, like water and water treatment. So they can be very competitive, and they have built capacities in order to export and take over markets like other countries. So we are seeing that other countries have their own strategy and they're successful. So I think Indonesia can be very successful. We have to address it, and that's what we're trying to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Second panelist is Pak Jemmy Kartiwa. I think he is joining us from Bandung. So he's the chairman of Indonesia Textile Associations. He is just less than a year in the association chairmanship, but he and his team has worked very hard, of course, strategically, not easy, and closely with the relevant ministries and parties to identify issues, challenges, and of course, solutions. Pak Jemmy is also the owner of Danarmas Concern. Pak Jemmy, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Pak Basrie. The screen already, the share screen.
Operator, can we get the slides of Pak Jemmy? Okay, here we go. Go ahead, Pak Jemmy. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. The next slide. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia, a home to more than 268 million people, is the world's foremost populous nation. This single statistic alone highlights and places Indonesia among the world's largest economy that is still full of underdeveloped potential. This set of conditions created a huge opportunity to be taken advantage by domestic industry that can further develop the economy. However, most of Indonesian focus on international trade for the past several years have always been more inclined toward export, oriented policy, leading us to believe that this one slight approach to focus on export side of trade in causing us to forget to control the amount import entering the market that result in foreign entities, taking advantage our developing domestic market potential. Instead of our own local industry, textile industry is one of the Indonesian key industry and one of the largest contributor to Indonesia's growth domestic product. It is also important to remember that textile industry is a labor-intensive industry, employing up to 3.5 million of workers all over Indonesia in 2019. Without import control, it is highly possible that this condition could cause the sunset of Indonesian textile industry in the whole world. This would like causing dropping number of jobs and huge number of unemployment. In recent years, we can see lack of policy. Next slide, please. Yeah. In recent years, we can see the lack of policy that regulates and control importing goods, and that enter the Indonesian control in domestic market, allowing massive amount of imported goods to the flood Indonesia in the domestic market, combined with other oversight related to the lack of pricing standard for imported goods. Not only do import comes in massive amount, important goods are also being sold locally at extremely low price that are much more lower than the most our domestic goods. Within the textile industry, over time, the imported goods began to further dominate our domestic textile market. Despite the growing number of the national consumption, market share of domestic textile goods continues to decline. In 2016, local manufacturer held 65.37 of total domestic market share. By 2019, only 58.58% of market share can be contributed to local manufacturer. This shows that the almost half of our domestic market share has been substituted by imported goods. The local industry trade balance, the next slide. The local textile industry trade balance and control the local market share continue decline, could have long-term repercussion to the Indonesian economy. Should this decline be left unresolved, the Indonesian textile industry growth rate will be negative by 2022. We remain so for the foreseeable future, while being threatened by massive amount of importing floating to the domestic market. Domestic textile goods also face difficulties in terms of price competition with imported goods. The main cause is that Indonesia has such high production costs compared to the major textile producing countries such as China, India, Vietnam, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. As comparison, China, India, and Bangladesh have providing several export facilities to their textile industry, such as China. Export tax rebate is given to the industry ranging from 8% to 16%. In addition to the government of China also provide municipal wastewater treatment facility for industry managed by the government, which allow Chinese textile industry to have lower production and cost even more. In Bangladesh, a policy named Export Policy Order was made order to promote export growth. Textile industry is as one of the priority sector is given several facilities such as tax rebate, duty-free imports of equipment, and export credit allow low interest on soft term. Next. Next. Yeah. In India, particularly in Andhra Pradesh, local textile industry is given power tariff subsidy ranging from 1 rupee to 5.5 rupee for a period of 5 years from the date of commencement of commercial production. In addition, the India's government also encouraged industrial coal combustion product, namely fly ash and bottom ash, to be utilized instead of treated as hazardous waste in Indonesia called B3. Next. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, domestic textile industry has never been given such a policy to stimulate ability to compete in both domestic and local market. While the textile industry remained to be one of the main contributors to Indonesia gross domestic product, domestic industry policy, which put textile industry as a priority sector, is close to none. Next. The already undeveloped condition is worsened with the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Lockdown in several key export destination countries around the world caused major hit in textile industry operational process, causing the utilization rate of the national level to decline from 80% to less than 20%. More than 2 million workers were temporarily sent home. This in the global market, export stocks in large textile producing countries like China filled up that the moment international trade was back in business, large market like Indonesia was made main export target. BPS data show that in July 2020, fabric was ranked as Indonesia's largest import, while the apparel import reached 20.58 million. This amount of import proved to get in our way to recover the industry post-lockdown. Without excessive import, the industry utilization rate could recover as much as 60% in August 2020. Yet in reality, it was only able to reach 40%. Hence, policy reformation is urgently needed in order to resolve such condition in order to push its growth. Indonesian textile industry is an urgent need to pro-industry policy. We highly thank to the government of Indonesia for ratifying Omnibus Law on job creation. However, the bill itself needs to be supported by more specific and more technical regulation to cater the needs of textile industry effectively. Such policy as proposed are to reduce Indonesia dependency on imported goods by regulating import. Let me emphasize that we are not suggesting to restrict import practice in a world. Imports should be allowed in a controlled amount, particularly among the textile goods. Imports should be allowed only to cater the domestic industry need for raw material for production. Imports should not be backfire for our national economy. In addition, import fraud practice must be eradicated for import control policy for succeed. Small and medium industries should be given even more opportunity and be supported to be able to rise in the market. Would like to thank Indonesian Ministry of Industry for opportunity given through the 35% import substitution program, which hopefully allow Indonesian textile industry to revive. Yet such policies should also be commenced with reforming domestic industrial policy, which bring us to our next proposal. Next, please. To reform domestic industrial policy, particularly those regarding production costs, we ask the government to ease such policy to hinder our ability to improve our competitiveness in the market. Indonesian textile industry is an urgent need to cut our production costs to be able to compete in the market, particularly such hard time where people purchasing power are lower than usual because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Electricity price should be reduced, particularly for those industry operating for 24 hours. Policy regarding industrial waste water treatment should be eased on par with those applied in other major textile producing countries. By easing domestic industrial policy, production costs should be lower by significant amount, thus allowing domestic textile industry to sell product in a way much more competitive price. Next, we believe that adjusting Industrial policy with what the most domestic industry and urgently needs would create such a strong, secure, and investor-friendly business climate in Indonesia in a near future. A more secure business climate would also draw more investment in Indonesia, thus boosting Indonesian economy in a whole. We strongly have faith in the government's goodwill and commitment to support our textile industry to revive through more domestic industrial-friendly policy. Besides, with the integration upstream and midstream and downstream units in Indonesian textile industry, we also have faith that our industry will be able to rise together to bring back Indonesian textile industry to its glorious day. Ladies and gentlemen, I do sincerely hope that our forum today will provide us with useful insight to contribute the revival of Indonesia textile industry. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope this seminar will be great success.
Thank you, Pak Jemmy Kartiwa, for the very straightforward presentations and recommendations. I think our next, I'm going to go directly to Professor Didik Rachbini because we are almost 15 past 7 minutes. Professor Didik Rachbini, to make one sentence for his profile is very hard for me, so let me try. Prof. Didik is a former member of the House of Representatives and also the People's Consultative Assembly, or the MPR, back in 1998. He's also a researcher, an economist, a lecturer, and an author. So, Prof. Didik, speaking about sovereign problem, we want to hear your best tips for the industry and also for the government to achieve a sustainable growth for this industry textile. People say that this is a sunset industry, and Pak Jemmy also mentioned that it's not a level playing field for everyone, and even the president's underlined, the three things, which is including the high cost of the production of Indonesia. But Didik, the stage is yours.
Okay, Pak Basrie, thank you very much. The time is very limited, right? Yeah. I have only 10-15 minutes. Yeah. Let's start. I will let's start with the number 4. Yeah, the slide number 4. Yeah. I was asked for explaining the economic and policy perspective on industry and textile industry. Yeah. But I believe then I will show you that the policy, the performance of industry and textile industry is a reflection, of the total or whole economic policy. Yeah? As you know in this, as you see in this chart, this is very long-term economic growth. Before crisis, we had a very big crisis in 1982. We had before 7 and 8% economic growth, and we had maybe 14 or 15% of textile industry export growth. Also double-digit industry growth, industrial sector growth. In 1992, 1982, we had also crisis. Oil price down up to less than $10 per barrel. Because of that, the regime, the president had a problem, and there is no choice. There should be a structural adjustment to do that. And then we had the structural adjustment, outward-looking strategy, revitalizing industry, export orientation, and so on and so on. So that is all the best practice that we had. At least we have to follow that policy. So this is the story behind this long-term growth. Now after that, after crisis, we had only 5% growth. As you know that before crisis, our export growing very fast. And then we achieve at least more than $100 billion US. So that's the story behind this chapter. maybe directly to slide 7, yeah. Slide, yeah, okay. Next year, yeah. Participant, next year, this is not quite clear, but at least I want to explain in one word, yeah, in one sentence, yeah. Next year, at least the government has a prediction of 3.5 up to 4.5% economic growth, yeah. I don't believe it, yeah. At least my prediction 3 to 4%. But this is much better than negative economic growth at present in 2020. Yeah. Next, yeah. Next, yeah. Next again. This is the this is the performance of export our export 2017, 2018, 2019. This is different from the data, international data. This underestimate, but at least I want to show you that our export up and down. Yeah. Why? Because we don't have any. We don't have a very stable industrial policy, and our export. Yeah, export is a reflection of our strength of our economy. Yeah, that's wherever in Taiwan, Korea, and so on. Yeah? So our export up and down, also textile industry, because of dependent on the natural resources like palm oil, yeah, rubber, and so on and so on. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. This is maybe not quite clear also. This is the performance of export Indonesia in comparison between Singapore number 1, yeah, and then Vietnam number 2, Malaysia number 3, Thailand number 4, and Indonesia number 5. Yeah, even we are the largest, Indonesia is the half of economy. Indonesia is the half of the economy of ASEAN. Yeah, half, almost half. Yeah, but the export performance number 5. So this is a reflection of the trade policy in Indonesia. So we the message is we have to be more and more outward looking, yeah, and we have to increase our strength in international market. Yeah. Next, yeah. You see, this is the data that I want to show you from at least 1970, yeah, up to 1990s, yeah. The export performance increase. After that, down. Yeah? So meaning after down, also this is a reflection of the textile industry, meaning there is a kekosongan, ya, not kekosongan pemimpin, as Pak JK mentioned, kekosongan policy, Pak Basrie, ya, kekosongan policy, bukan kekosongan pemimpin, ya. The shortage of the economic policy, ya. I mentioned before in the beginning of my slide, in 1982, yeah, our economy almost collapsed. Yeah, if there is military conflict at that time, President Soeharto will also be collapsed. Yeah, but because of economy, yeah. But after that, President Soeharto with the technocrat, making a very good policy, and then economic growth flying again up to 7%. Now there is empty of the economic policy. Oh, this is the only sample of data. Lanjut, Pak. Lanjut, Pak. Ya. Pak Basrie, ya, Pak Soeb, ya. I want to mention this chart, ya, at least 20 years long-term charts, ya. We are shifting from tradable sector. Tradable is industry. This is the largest. Agriculture and mining. Yeah. So this is the essence of the export orientation, but the growth of our tradable good, yeah, black, as compared to non-tradable services, red, much lower. Before our export, yeah, our growth of the sectoral industry now is the growth of industry now 3 to 4%. Before, during the 1980s to 1990s, the end of 1990s, the growth of industrial sector more than 10%. Yeah, sometimes 11%, 12%. Yeah, if the economic growth 6% or 7%, industry growing twice, almost twice. Yeah, but no, only 3 to 4. Yeah, so that's also the economic growth of textile industry. Yeah? So it is also similar. Yeah, economy, industry sector, and then textile sector, subsector. Yeah, lanjut Pak. This is the lanjut Pak, explanation of the graphic. Yeah, this, you know Pak, the PDB of the growth of PDB of industry also lower. Yeah, you see at the end of triwulan 4, yeah, 2019 is only 3%. Yeah, as I mentioned, in 1990s, in 1980s, yeah, the growth of industry, manufacturing industry, more than 10%. Yeah, so we have to revive our industrial sector. Yeah, lanjut Pak. Lanjut ya, because time is limited. Ya, continue ya, because of crisis. Lanjut Pak. Nah, this is value added also down. Ya, this is also a reflection of ICOR. You know, ICOR incremental capital output ratio is less efficient in our economy. Ya, karena pemerintahan daerah and so on. Ya, lanjut Pak. Nah, this is Pak. Large investment but small return. Pak Safi also mentioned in the beginning, not only actually Pak, there are also inflow of investment, yeah, but the contribution to the economic growth is not so big. You know, in the right side, yeah, the ICOR of our economy, Indonesia, is 6.4, yeah, meaning to increase our 1% of economic growth, yeah. In Indonesia, we need 6.4% of the capital growth, yeah, meaning less efficient, yeah, as compared to Thailand or Philippines 3.7, Thailand 4.5, yeah. So this is a less efficient economy. So this is related with the politik, Pemda, and so on and so on. Yeah. Lanjut Pak ya. Mungkin lanjut Pak ya. Lanjut. Mungkin textile. We go to textile industry. Lanjut textile Pak. I think textile industry, my opinion, yeah, there is still hope for textile industry. Yeah, I see that textile export is one of the 5 biggest, largest export commodity. Yeah, I think sunset for Footloose. Yeah, Footloose, forget it. Yeah, give it to Bangladesh, give it to Cambodia, and so on. But for the garment and the higher class of the textile, will be our chance to go there. Lanjut Pak, datanya, coba lihat datanya. This is the data, ya. You know Pak ya, textile industry number 4 of 5 ya. Pertama minyak sawit ya, palm oil. The second is batu bara, coal ya. Ketiga apa itu Pak? Ketiga steel ya. Keempat logam mulia, gold ya. Keempat pakaian jadi itu. Masih ada 5%, 5 terbesar di Indonesia. Jadi sekarang masalahnya, ya Pak Jeremy, masalahnya karena dihajar oleh Bangladesh, dihajar oleh Vietnam, kita kaget, tidak langsung jam ke yang tingkat tinggi ya. Nah Pak, saya ini komisaris di textile industry ya, yang di atas itu oke, ya, growth-nya itu oke, no problem ya, yang melayani Nike dan yang lain ya. Saya kira itu Pak, dari lanjut ya, continue ya Pak ya. Ya, ini Pak, lihat Pak ya, tidak stabil, not stable, manufacturing textile ya, tidak stabil, naik turun ya. Nah sekarang slide lanjutan ya, slide terakhir deh, slide 20, lanjut Pak, slide lanjut ya, the conclusion ya, conclusion ya. Saya banyak, ya wait, no, ke atas, conclusion Pak ya, conclusion ya. Ini banyak Pak Basrie, sorry ya, banyak slide saya, enggak, ke atas lagi, ke atas ya, ke atas, satu lagi, ke atas, satu lagi, stop ya, oke Pak ya, sekarang ya, saya sudah mengatakan, I said before that policy on industry as well as for textile industry is similar to industrial policy for industry, trade policy, industrial policy, similar to that. Yeah. So this is not different. The policy for textile, the policy for automotive, the policy for palm oil, and so on. Yeah, it's not different. Yeah. So there should be a single, what we call outward-looking orientation. Yeah. Our export now only 1/3 as compared to GDP, but Malaysia 100%. Yeah. Singapore more than 100%. So we have to continue our effort like in 1980s. Yeah. Outward-looking orientation, export promotion, competitiveness, structural adjustment, efficient level, and production level, and so on. Nah, ini contohnya Pak, lanjut satu kali ya. Lanjut. Pak Jokowi ya already start with one effort ya, tapi tidak yang lain Pak, kredit dan segala macam tidak ya. Coba lihat zaman Pak Jokowi ya. Ini kemudahan berusaha, is doing business, increase ya. Ya, much better from 2015 to 2020 dari 114 to ranking 73. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, but not enough. Yeah, we have to continue our effort like in 1990s. Yeah, 1990s is the best policy. Yeah, the best practice. Yeah, saya mengatakan tadi Pak Basrie ya, itu collapse itu apa namanya minyak itu turun menjadi $7, $6 per barel. Padahal 90% dari ya 90% dari penerimaan negara itu dari minyak. Pak Harto kalang kabut, kalau ada konflik itu Pak Harto jatuh saya yakin karena ekonominya kolaps. Tapi tidak punya pilihan lain, Pak Harto menjadikan teknokratnya untuk merubah sekalian. Dan separuh dari kementerian, half of the Ministry of Finance, separuh dari Kementerian Keuangan diprivatisasi Pak. Paham waktu itu Pak ya? Yaitu bea cukai.
Privatization, ya.
Jadi ya, karena itu structural adjustment yang luar biasa ya. Nah sekarang nggak berani itu, DPR itu nggak berani ya. Saya gitu Pak, sorry mixing.
Okay, so because thank you Prof. Didik, because we have a number of questions that we need to answer. So number one is from Dian Nafi. Question is, how about home industry textiles such as customized shibori by small entrepreneur? I think this is easily be answered, and even by Rayon, for example, that the UMKM, the small and medium enterprises, have been using it. So if you look at the statistic, even during pandemic, the price and the demand of Rayon from May, June, July, up to now is going high, Ibu Dian. Why? Because loungewear, the needs of demand, the online demand is very high. So I hope that answered the questions number one. But Pak Jemmy, feel free about if you want to answer, how about home industry textiles such as customized shibori for small entrepreneur? Jadi shibori. Selanjutnya, sebentar Pak Jemmy, how does the omnibus law positively or negatively impact the textile industry? Does it create more or positive or negative impact to the industry? I think Atsila Prayaska, you have listened this explanation from Pak Jemmy already. This from Retma APSyFi to everyone. Prof. Didik, which is more important between export or domestic market in terms of COVID-19 pandemic? Many countries more protectionist. Even before COVID-19, government policy in relaxing on raw material import to push export is not working and make our market share in domestic market are getting worse. I think this question first to Prof. Didik, which is more important between export or this huge 270 million population? Prof. Didik.
Pak Basrie ya,
yes.
If we can reach the international market, meaning that the level of competitiveness is much higher. Like Taufik Hidayat, he can play in the London much better rather than in Pekalongan, Pak.
Okay.
Jadi if textile of Pak Jeremy reach the America, reach the London, and so on, much better. That will conquer also the domestic market. So meaning That's the.
So you're saying export is more important because as you look, this business of fashion of textile is very huge. Maybe this year globally is around 650 billion, and Indonesia export is, everyone is saying, is around 12.9 billion in 2019. Maybe this year around 10 or 11 billion is going down slightly. But then so many international brands, Pak Didik, is aiming at our domestic market because it's huge. Just many of the questions is raising during this opportunity. So Pak Jemmy, do you want to answer the impact of the omnibus law? Is it positive? Is it negatively? Is from Atsila Prayaska.
Actually, omnibus law is give a good positive impact because not only in law worker enforcement, also in tax, like the penalty before is 2% per month. Now is they reducing to the banking rate plus, I think, plus 4%. Also many like this PPN konsinyasi before is cannot, but under the omnibus law, PPN konsinyasi is allowing by the government.
Okay. So I have one last question, I think, representing the audience to everyone. If Pak Ravi, Prof. Didik, and Pak Jemmy, if you were the one in charge in the cabinet, in the ministerial cabinet, to manage this textile industry, what is your number one top priority in the first 12 months? Because Prof. Didik, you said that it's the absence of crystal clear economic policies. It's the absence, ketidakadaan, because that's generate low impact, low quality of growth. Pak Ravi, if you were the Minister of Textile, what is your number one top priority in the first 12 months? You go first, Pak Ravi.
I would leverage the infrastructure that is there, the integrated value chain that is there. I would leverage it by improving cost competitiveness.
Okay, Pak Jemmy, you, Pak, if you are the cabinet minister of textile industry, like in India, so what is your number one top priority in the first 12 months?
We have to make the same level playing field, Pak.
Okay, got it.
Many
you are politicians, Pak. If you are elected, as the minister of textile, what is your number one priority?
Actually, Pak Ravi is better as minister rather than me.
So smart answer. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Prof. Didik. Very smart questions. Politicians kita kalah. Pak Ravi, Pak Jemmy, thank you so much. Back to you, Pak Sweb.
Okay. Terima kasih, Pak. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Back to you, Pak Sweb. I think our friends from BKPM still listening, so we'll put this recommendation, Pak Sweb, for our friends at BKPM. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Pak Basrie, for, I think, moderating a very dynamic, I think, very insightful conversation and a panel discussion. There are still many questions to answer, but I think we're running out of time. But what we will do is we will post some of these questions on our website later on. So thank you very much, Pak Basrie, for moderating the session. Thank you too for the panelists, Pak Ravi Shankar, Pak Jemmy, and of course, Professor Didik, who actually provided a little bit of controversial statements regarding the outlook for the textile sector. But I think one thing is very clear as a takeaway from the sector: Indonesia's potential is huge. But realizing that potential does not come automatically. I think the work is cut out for both the government and for the industry to realize that potential. If we can conquer both the domestic market, I think what Professor Didik has mentioned is very important. Competitiveness is critical. And competitiveness comes from both good policy as well as strong management of the industrial sector. So thank you very much for joining us. Stay tuned. We have another session coming up, which is also as interesting and as exciting as this one. Thank you again, all the speakers and the panelists, for joining us and for sharing with us your deep insights. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Pak Basrie, terima kasih, Pak.